Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's version of Live Since You Asked. We're very happy to have with us Logan Mahoney, St. John's Prep class of 2014, and Spencer Mahoney, Bishop Fenwick High School class of 2009. Thanks for being here today, guys.
Thanks for having us, Dr. Hardman.
We really appreciate your willingness to create some time. I know things are busy. You guys are moving things forward at Atomic Coffee Roasters, but before we get into kind of the business world, Logan, can you talk a little bit about your experience of how education, your experience at St. John's, and even your work today as a coach has kind of helped guide you and kind of what you've learned from that experience? And Spencer, we'll ask you a question too about your time at Fenwick, just so you don't feel neglected in this.
I appreciate that.
Sure. So especially kind of how it relates directly to what we're kind of going through right now as a business. I'd say the biggest thing the prep preaches and thing that I took away, with other students and friends and also teachers, is definitely the relationship aspect of the prep. Everyone always talks about, what a great network it is. Truly, I'm saying it is a great network as a young entrepreneur. And Spencer and our inner team here at Atomic have been talking a lot about our core values and, where we see ourselves going in the future with Atomic. And at my, kind of the epicenter of what I like doing and what I want to do at Atomic, it all relates back to relationships. So I look at sales as a relationship business. Sales to me isn't a great word, but the relationships I built at the prep still, hold a lot of value today, whether it's coaches, teachers, parents, parents now that I'm coaching, current students, or whatever it may be. I'd say relationships are, the one thing that I really, take a lot of pride in what I do, and that definitely stemmed from the prep.
Sure. Spencer, how about you? How has your time at the Catholic High School with Bishop Fenwick helped you kind of guide things forward and working with Logan and what you're doing?
To be honest, that was a lot longer ago than Logan, and I was probably not as focused on the business world in high school as Logan was throughout high school. So not to jump off of my experience at Bishop Fenwick, but just to think about what Logan was saying about the prep. I also kind of learned about that firsthand when I was coaching CrossFit at the prep for 2 years. I was doing that 17 and 18 and 18 and 19 year. So I got to see a lot of that firsthand. And I was coaching some kids, workouts, but also it was nice to see their perspective and where they're going to college or what they think about the world, and be able to give them some of my feedback, knowing that I wasn't, super thinking about that ahead of time, but now with some experience under my belt, just teaching them about, some things they should be looking forward to when they're out there in the world.
Sure, just kind of finding that drive and that passion to move things forward. That's great.
Yep.
Guys want to talk a little bit about the business? What is maybe some people say it's self-explanatory, but what is Atomic Coffee Roasters? What are you guys doing? How do you diversify your business, and how did you get into this?
Sure. Do you want to give the background?
Yeah, I can start. Two of our uncles founded Atomic in 1996 as a cafe. A couple of years later, they started roasting their own coffee and started building a wholesale program, selling to different cafes and different restaurants up and down the North Shore into Boston. And then really fast forward to now, we still have that cafe in Beverly. We have expanded our wholesale a great deal, as well as really gotten into cold brew. We have a 15,000 square foot space in Danvers where we are brewing our own cold brew. Basically, it looks kind of like a beer brewery with just big stainless tanks. And then we're putting it into kegs so that we can bring to restaurants and cafes and have cold brew on tap, as well as putting it into cans and bottles and distributing. And then we have a space in Salem where is primarily where I'm working out of, that is the coffee roastery. So we're roasting all of our coffee there. the coffee that's going to go into cold brew or be sold online or go to our different partners. So we have a lot of different products and a lot of channels between grocery stores and online and restaurants and offices. So there's something new happening every day, and we've got a small but growing team. So it's a good chance every day and week to kind of learn something new and run into something we've never seen before and figure it out. So that's what I look forward to kind of on a daily, weekly basis.
Sure. One of the things we've talked a lot about with a few other people who have been part of our live since you asked is kind of the innovation piece. As you guys look at what you're doing, how is kind of that entrepreneurial spirit? We were talking a little bit before we went live about your two young entrepreneurs. How is being an entrepreneur? What are the things that you really are excited about it, and what are the big challenges about being an entrepreneur as well?
Yeah, I think going off of that too, just kind of, my father and my uncle are the two co-owners of Atomic, and my dad will be they'll both be the first ones to admit that the quote unquote young guys run the business. And we have a solid young team here, and although we don't own the business, we're running it on the day-to-day, so we feel like we are the entrepreneurs. I think innovation wise, whether it's we pre-COVID, we were down in Costa Rica, and Spencer gets me to try new things. I'm very reluctant to do so. I'm trying to grow as a person, but previous to that, I wasn't into, single origin coffee and, cupping different types of coffee and learning, more about the trade. All I really was focused on was sales and building relationships in my network. So, one of our core values too that we talked about, I hate to keep harping on it, but is always just innovating, whether that's, just inside of our team and, continuing to craft our skills and mold our skills. But I think too, with the amount of different channels we're doing, it's tough to be like, just always go after, what's the next thing, what's the next thing. So I'd say, innovation for us is almost, maximizing our potential with the products that we have now, and just bolstering our relationships that we currently have, and, obviously trying to further our business that way.
One actual innovation we've made due to everything that's happening in the world right now is we weren't shipping cases of cold brew through our online store before because they have to stay cold. So that comes with its own challenges of making sure that it's going to get to the end consumer still at the right temperature, and the shipping cost and what the different shipping costs are from here to X, Y, and Z state. So we kind of always put that off. And then as soon as this all started happening, cold brew was really the thing that took the biggest hit for us, because a lot of that was going to offices and universities that are obviously now empty. And so we were like, how do we get our cold brew out there? We're still making this. We just need a different channel. So we have a good group of guys that just put everything together, figured out what it was going to cost, what we have to make it worthwhile, and just made it happen. And in the last month, that was our #1 selling thing on our website. So that would be an obvious innovation, for us in the last 6 weeks.
Yeah, it's great agility in the midst of some pretty challenging times. Logan, you mentioned traveling down to Costa Rica. Where do you guys, where do you source your coffee beans? And some of our classes talk a lot about fair trade and coffee. How does that impact the business and work that you guys do?
He's the one that's around it, and Spencer's in charge of our green coffee buying as well. So he can talk a little bit about where we're sourcing from, whether it's year round or obviously single origins. We're getting them from one place. So you can touch on it.
Yeah, we get coffees from all over the world, Africa, Indonesia, Central and South America. We primarily work with just a few partners that we know to make not only good product, but like you said, are treating employees well and are focused on quality and not just quantity and mass producing. So I think that when we did go down to Costa Rica, that was a partner we've been working with for a long time. But you can only talk, you can only read about, how things happen on a coffee farm, how you process it so much, but to actually go down there and see it firsthand was pretty big for us. And just to see like what this company in particular is doing for the workers on the farm. They have like, they're explaining that, to get to a doctor's office from there would normally be an entire day. To take a 2-hour bus down to the city, they would lose the day of work. And so a lot of times workers would end up not going to the doctor because that would just be easier. It would be less cost to the family. And so they have that, on site. They have a dentist on site. They're helping them figure out retirement funds. So just different things like that is hard to read that on a piece of paper and understand, what that actually means versus seeing that firsthand.
That's awesome that you guys take so much interest in making sure that the workers at the different farms are being taken care of and being supported. That's really tremendous. I had a question that just slipped right out of my head. So here it goes. A lot of a lot of students at St. John's are going to be applying to college, and even kind of wanting to be entrepreneurs themselves. And one of the things that's really challenging is how do you distinguish yourselves amongst your peers, and how do you make yourself stand out? You guys are in a pretty competitive business, and there's a relatively big company that does coffee that started around here that has a big marketing franchise in a lot of different places, whether it's Dunkin's or Starbucks. Yeah. How do you guys work really hard to make Atomic stand out? And Logan, when you're making the pitch at different places to get Atomic in there, how are you engaging people and coming to kind of see what you're doing as different than what others are doing?
Yeah. I'd say all these discussions we've done in leadership meetings recently, and why when I go in, what am I pitching? Because at the end of the day, I mean, I can name 4 other roasters in Massachusetts that source from the exact same farms we're roasting from or we're sourcing from. So at the end of the day, we're in so many segments that it does come back to relationships. That's something we pride ourselves on here. We're, a young go-getting team that, grocery stores, I'd say, between Alex, one of our teammates here, and myself, when this first hit, take Crosby Supermarkets, for example, I texted their head GM and said, hey, if I stop in and you guys are, out of coffee, we can get it to you the next day. So, just having that respect and building that rapport with people, I'd say is, the biggest thing to us. And we're just trying to, at the end of the day, help as many people as possible drink better coffee. So whether that's an educational piece, we just added Ellen to our team that she has a plethora of knowledge in specialty coffee. So she's going to help further us in that side, in that segment. So it is tough, it is competitive, but it's all about preaching your story and sticking to what you believe in. And there's plenty of customers out there for everyone. So just stick to it.
Luckily, we're in a business that you don't have to convince somebody to use the product.
Yeah.
You just have to convince somebody to use our product, our version.
Right. We're going to have to figure out a way to get your product at St. John's Prep and figure out how that works moving forward.
Yeah.
A couple of our students have tossed in some questions, and just a reminder to everybody listening, if you have questions for Logan and Spencer, if you're on an iPad or iPhone, you can just hit the question button and type in your question. If you're on a desktop, you'll see the question on the menu, or a desktop or a laptop, you'll see the question menu over to the side. So AJ is wondering, when you guys look to different places to sell your various products, where are you having the most success? And I'll add to that, are you looking to kind of expand outside of, kind of North Shore, Merrimack Valley, New England, or what are you looking to do moving forward?
Sure. The sales question,
I just figured.
Yeah. So for me, my territory or my 2 segments were office coffee and small grocery. So the Crosbys of the world, and then office coffee, obviously. We do cold brew on tap and hot coffee for a lot of the greater Boston areas. So for me, I'd say that segment, that's probably going to stay in this area, just New England. But I mentioned Ellen before. We are looking to, go beyond that and expand, but we definitely want to have a very strong foothold on not only New England, but even more hyper focused on the North Shore in Boston. There's plenty of accounts in Boston that we would love to have. And 6 to 12 months ago, based on just different people that we haven't had in place, and Spencer has about 6 roles, and he took over the roasting facility as the GM, 6 months ago? Longer? Not even
4 months. Feels like a year.
So bolstering that team over there has definitely helped us, and now we feel as though we can go after some of those larger accounts. So we definitely want to have a really strong foothold in the area. We're just trying to slowly expand that way, and then if all goes well, you'll see us in different places like New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania eventually.
That's exciting.
He was saying too that if when you're going in, what are you going to pitch? If it's relationships and we can do this for you, that gets harder as you go further away from where you are. So some channels that we're in, like office coffee, like that is so relationship based that it stays kind of closer versus being on the shelf at a supermarket and you're hoping that the person going through the coffee aisle is going to just grab your bag of coffee instead of somebody else. Like that's a little bit further reaching, and that takes a whole different approach than something that's really one-on-one like the office coffee segment. So we really just kind of look at what the channel is and the logistics behind each one.
Sure. So this one, we'll keep it anonymous, but do you have interns? Are you taking some prep students who may be looking for something over the summer? Have you ever done internships?
Yeah, we've done interns. I think my email should be available, or I have a St. John's Prep email, so I'm always happy to talk to anybody, especially a prep student or alumni, so feel free to reach out for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, you can connect up with Logan directly, or connect with Nibal Awad in our alumni office, and she can connect up with either of you. There's also, you talked a little bit about, partnering with places like Crosby's and small groceries. Is there kind of a partnership of smaller businesses on the North Shore that you guys are a part of? And you talked the relationship on the sales side. Do you have relationships and connections with other small businesses as you look to kind of market your products?
I think especially speaking to like Crosby's and Henry's, we've been lucky to, we haven't really talked about background, like my father's background, my mother's background. They've, been in food and beverage. So Spencer and I kind of, didn't have a choice. We were kind of just born into this. And, my dad has had relationships with them forever. So us, coming into Atomic, I was 2 years ago. Spencer a little bit less than that. Just kind of lucked out with those, but just bolstering those relationships and trying to create new ones.
Sure. I think another kind of good example too would be like, obviously we're working with different cafes and they're all going through a challenging time right now. Just like our cafe in Beverly is currently shut down, and now that things are starting to become a little clearer, or at least we know like what's happening kind of day to day now, we're looking at how to open back up. And we're also, like, my uncle has been working closely with a couple of our partners that are also cafes about opening back up like at the same time, and kind of all going through it together and knowing like what the challenges are, and having somebody else to lean on versus kind of going in on it alone. Or also, like, we have a partner, One Mighty Mill in Lynn, who is they make awesome bagels and tortillas and pretzels, and they are, where was I going with this? So they're still making products, and they're sold at Whole Foods and grocery stores, but their cafe in Lynn is closed down. So we've been figuring out ways to connect with them. We got an inquiry from somebody that was looking to do care packages at home for some of their employees. So we teamed up with One Mighty Mill, and we sent them bags of coffee and bagels, just to get us more business and get One Mighty Mill more business, and kind of collaborate in that way.
Sure. No, that's great. All sorts of connections. So one of our parents and staff members is asking you, do you guys do any type of curbside pickup for your products right now? You know, they've seen the products at Crosby's, but are there other outlets right now to purchase what Atomic is selling?
Yep. Yeah. So we didn't do that before, but we had to figure that out. So we have the ability to, somebody can go on our website, which is atomicroastery.com, and order anything from there and choose to pick it up in Danvers. And basically you pick a time and you call us when you get here and we'll bring it right out to your car. And that's beans or nitro cold brew in cans.
Awesome. And any Kcups for those who've got the Keurig going on at home? That was one of the questions that came in.
No, we're not doing Kcups. But, you know, my father, when we first started, he you know, asked if we could do it. I know personally, you know, I've taken kind of a sales role and we've been pushing hot coffee to hospitals right now, just as like a, we're donating a bunch of coffee to whoever basically reaches out.
Sure.
And if you have an adapter, I don't know what they call them, that you can pour the ground coffee in, that's been the easiest way for us. It's still a fresh cup of coffee, so I'd say that's probably the easiest way to do it.
Yeah, I'm more the quality control guy, and I'm trying to keep us away from cake as possible.
So what are the, you know, a little bit of a personal question coming in, when you guys look at your coffee consumption in the day, how much coffee do you guys drink on a regular basis?
Well, since this happened, I can't go to CrossFit anymore. And I have kind of forced Spencer, and I've got, how many friends do I have in the business? Brendan was my college, one of my college roommates. He is our logistics, do everything type guy. He's great. And Alex, who works at the roastery, have been working out here and doing, we're playing basketball today. So I'm limited to 2 cups. Typically, I mean, Brendan's gone up to 6 cups.
It's also one of those things where, like, you got to imagine if somebody is working at a bakery, they're not eating, you know, bread and cookies all day, or at least you would hope. Sure. But I mean, some days, yeah, I don't know, you kind of get into a schedule and you have certain cups at certain times of the day, like I'm sure everybody else does. But it's definitely challenging to try to make sure that you're fitting water in between.
Sure. So again, we have about, you know, 35 high school students and different people listening. And you guys have been, you know, as we talked a little bit about being entrepreneurs, about, you know, kind of taking over different aspects of the business. If you could look back and see yourself in high school, what advice would you give our students if they're, you know, they're looking to kind of get into the world of entrepreneurship, whether it's the coffee world or other different worlds? What input do you have based on your experience that can help them, you know, move forward with success?
You first.
I think that the best thing that you can do is try to start something small, whether it's it's really hard to learn lessons about what to do in business without actually having any business happening around you to apply it to. And that was definitely my biggest struggle in school. And now all of a sudden that you're out of school and you're in the real world and things are happening all the time and you have to make decisions and you have to do X, Y, and Z, has me going back to like, oh yeah, I did learn some things about this, but it really takes like the real life application to be able to really apply it. So I would say that kind of, if you're looking at different aspects of business, like see what you can learn, like in terms of skills that would be helpful when you're in the business world that you can already be working on now. Like, I think the easiest is anything in terms of like marketing. Like it's hard to start, you know, building relationships when you don't have a business, or really trying to sell something when you don't have a product. But learning how to market yourself, or learning how to do, you know, have different skills with whether it be social media or Photoshop or photography, like all of these things are things that people in business rely on, and it might not be the typical like what you think an entrepreneur is doing every day, but entrepreneurs need these things for every business. And so if you're able to do some of those things yourself, then you don't have to be paying somebody else to do them in the beginning, and it's only going to help. So I think just figuring out something that you can learn now that will be applicable later would definitely be helpful.
Awesome.
I would say, especially relating to the prep, I pride myself on being a football guy and coach there now. So I would say meet different people. I think, especially, we have a lot of different personalities in this business on the football team currently, and just kind of, especially learning through COVID. I think the more people you meet, I'm not saying that there's opportunities meeting people all the time, but it's just always good to know people. And one of the things I always harp on is food and beverage specifically is such a small world. Our reputation to us is everything. And I just think as many people in different, if you're going to join a club, join different clubs, which is something I regret not doing. Just things like that, meeting different people in, different settings, I think would be great.
Sure. Last question I'll put out to you guys is, earlier in this series, we had 2 world champion CrossFit athletes on here, and we learned a lot about the CrossFit world. Sometimes it takes a lot of resilience, it takes a lot of perseverance to kind of pursue. You guys have both mentioned it, Spencer as a coach here, Logan as someone who's done it. Can you make some parallels between kind of your focus as CrossFit athletes or those that are committed to CrossFit and the business world, and kind of talk specifically about, what motivates you to get back at it and to kind of stand up after you get knocked down, to use the cliche?
I got a specific example.
Go for it.
So I actually sent out a staff email today to everyone, and the coolest thing now, I don't have as much going on, and I like looking at why we allow people to tell us how they heard about us. And one really great way today was a man that works at the post office up in Maine smelled our fresh coffee through the boxes, and now he's on a subscription service. So things like that, I think, with sales, it really is up and down. And to me, you need to stay even keeled and just level headed. And it's the same thing, whether it's CrossFit or football. For me, more personally, you're not always going to have a great practice. And that's something I tell, I coach the receivers. It's like, that's something I tell them. It's like, hey, if you drop 10 balls, it's like tomorrow's a new day. So it's always just keeping that, at the forefront and just making sure you never just beat yourself up too much.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think that this whole situation with the world right now is kind of like getting, knocked down, and what are you able to do to get back up was literally us, whatever it was 6 weeks ago, trying to completely figure out how we're going to pivot and what we need to do, because things aren't the same anymore. And I think it's just, it helps having that mentality, that knowing, like, no matter what happens to you, it's only a challenge. It's something that you can overcome, and just knowing that, having that mindset that, like, okay, this might seem difficult right now, but in 5 minutes, in an hour, in a week, whatever, it's going to get easier, and we're going to figure this out. So I think that's what I related to mostly, is that, like, it has to get pretty bad for me to think that there's not light on the other side, and something that you can do to make sure that you're getting back up and being stronger than you were before.
That's awesome. I really appreciate you both taking the time in the midst of trying to deal with all the business challenges that you're facing, kind of share your experience with members of the prep community, and we really wish you luck, wish you well with what you're doing at Atomic Roasters. And then, as Logan, you said, Spencer, if people are interested in potential internships, what's out there, feel free to reach out. Good plug for your product as well, if people are out there. What's the website again?
It's www.atomicroastery.com.
Awesome. Spencer, Logan, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you guys.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. And if for those that are listening, on Thursday of this week, we have our next Live Sense You Ask, and we'll be talking with Mike Yastrzemski, class of 2009, and a member of the San Francisco Baseball Giants. So hope to see many of you then. Logan, Spencer, take care. Everybody stay safe and stay well. Take care, everyone.
Thanks. Thank you.